So in our editor-in-chief roundtable, I'm Dan Ackerman. I was the editor-in-chief of Gizmodo, and before that, I was an editorial director at CNET for a long, long time.
I am Sherri L, former editor-in-chief of LaptopMag. I started there as a staff writer and worked my way all the way to the top.
And I am Roger Cheng. I am the former editor-in-chief of Cord Cutters News, and before that, I was the executive editor number 2 at CNET, where I worked alongside Dan for a very long time.
And I'm Dana Wollman. I was the first female editor-in-chief at Engadget, and I actually believe the longest-running editor-in-chief. Left the site last month.
And how long is the longest running?
For me, that was 5.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's funny, Roger was just saying, leaving some of his jobs, you feel a great sense of relief because even if you left voluntarily, involuntarily, you get to take all these like pressures and all this stuff that builds up you'll never get rid of and just kind of shove it off the table. Did you feel the same way?
Yes, and I mean, I'm going to start with the most positive, one of the most positive things that might come from this conversation, which is I learned a lot. So I learned a lot about the business of media. I learned a lot about managing people. That is a really big load to carry around. You have way more intel about how the business is performing than even the person right underneath you in the masthead. It's a very unique position in that way. This idea of an editorial firewall, that a firewall between edit and business sort of goes out the window when you're in an editor-in-chief role. So you are keenly aware of both how the editorial is doing and also how the business is doing. And the pressure of preserving all these people's livelihoods is also on your shoulders. Not entirely on your shoulders. There are other people in the company who have a role to play at all also. But it is a lot to carry with you. And I learned a lot. But to your question, do I feel any release not carrying that with me at this moment? Yeah, sure.
And I have to imagine, like me and Sherri, like we were running things during the pandemic, and it's funny because we almost kind of block it out, but it was pretty horrible, and it felt like at a time, like before things actually got really good for online publishers, like it seemed like we're heading for some sort of existential crisis, like literally speaking with people, with lockdowns and like the way we had to like, and I just remember trying to keep it all together, keeping that all together, talking to folks, making sure folks were psychologically okay, that their mental and physical well-being were cared for. I mean, that was a lot of stress to put on oneself, and I just remember just how much energy that took, those first couple of years of the pandemic.
I think the job saved me. Like I have a thing. You can be king at work or you can be king at home. You can't be king in both places. But specifically during the pandemic, I was not king at home because I was going through a breakup of a long-term relationship, and it definitely pushed me to feed into some of my unhealthier habits in terms of not respecting work-life balance. So like it would be 14 hours I'd be at work because I'm on my couch, just avoiding whatever's going on, or just trying to keep my head down and I'm not in the mood for another argument. I got a lot of work done. It wasn't the most healthy way for me to deal with it. And then on top of that, I was a bit of a hypocrite because I'm sitting there stressing, begging my staff to take care of themselves and to sign off, and if you're burnt out and I'm not doing it for myself. So I was absolutely a hypocrite there, but like it was so much easier for me to work out my staff than worry about what was going on with me immediately. And then when we came out of the pandemic, it was just like there was a point when my body was like, okay, you've done 8 hours. I don't care what else you're doing. Like you're either going to sleep or you're going to do, but you're not going to work anymore.
And then to try to get people to go back to the office after that, I mean, Roger and I kind of went back a little bit, but we had lost our office during the pandemic and we had to like recreate a new home. But it was a weird transition for you guys, Dana and Sherri, to like, you and your staff to have to go back to the office that you were in up until whenever it was in 2020.
And at least at Engadget, New York was one of the biggest staff hubs, but we always had people spread across the country and the world. So that wasn't That was one of the few problems we didn't have in the pandemic. 2020 was otherwise a really no good, terrible, horrible year for Engadget specifically. Let's see, our GM left, and it took a while to fill that position. So I was wearing both hats, publisher and EIC, for about 10 months. We migrated to a different CMS, which ended up having terrible effects on our SEO. We lost a product manager. Obviously, the pandemic was hitting our business and everyone else's business. And was presented with, but actually successfully fought off layoffs toward the end of that year. So by the time we had an opportunity to bring in a new GM, I was like, yes, please. Please. It's a little lonely at the top.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. It's funny. I found myself working at a place that was when I went to Gizmodo. It was one of the first unionized digital media shops in New York, and they had a very strong union presence. And it was very adversarial with the upper management. And I was sort of caught between the two. I wasn't part of the union because I was the editor in chief, but I really wasn't part of upper management either. And I just saw basically these two, forces coming together with me squeezed in the middle. And a lot of it was me trying to protect people's jobs, because one of the ways that, upper management might try to exert some influences by saying, oh, let's fire this person, let's fire that person. But if you, put up roadblocks and try to prevent them from doing that, you can often at least have some effect on it.
That was my lesson, I think. There were a few reasons I think we were able to skirt layoffs, at least at that time. I think it happened that Engadget was having a great traffic quarter as all of this was being negotiated. This really did feel like a lesson to me, and I've heard this said about adulthood in general, that almost everything is negotiable, even if it doesn't seem that way. It took a long time to negotiate, though. It wasn't just one conversation. It was months of conversations. And that is very, very stressful. I went home and would have some bad dreams at night about layoffs and possibly having to say goodbye to people.
Oh, I completely agree with you about the dreams. I had to start taking some medication to relax at night because I couldn't sleep. I was having all kinds of crazy dreams. Is that an EIC thing? Does EIC stress, did that cause everybody to have weird sleep habits or weird dreams?
I've definitely lost sleep for stretches. It's my tenure, obviously, relative to the three of you. Well, actually, Dan, you and I, we had comparatively short tenures as EIC. I started in July, laid off in February, so I had a fairly short stretch. But I sort of count my executive editor tenure as that time where the stress was definitely getting to me, and I've definitely lost a lot of sleep the last year or two, which is again why when I got laid off, it was a bit of a relief.
It's so great to just, having worked, because I worked at CNET for 18 years, and to be able to just walk away and go, none of this is my problem anymore was very gratifying. Although walking away after 6 months at Gizmodo was even more satisfying in a way, because I think the problems piled up quicker there and seemed more intractable. And the vibe was, not as convivial. Whereas at CNET, Roger, we all, everybody pretty much always got along for the most part, on the editorial side. Sherri, what about sleeping, crazy dreams? What did EIC life do to you?
Well, I am by nature a vampire, so I don't sleep a lot. Those hours where I should be sleeping are usually spent reading or playing video games until 4 in the morning, and then I get up. I'll take a 6-hour nap, wake up and be like, all right, I had to go to work. But the last, starting from the pandemic on, I noticed that Sundays would be my time. Okay, I can't sleep at all. I guess I'm just gonna stay up all night. Day, because it's just okay, I gotta, because you're getting back into work mode. And okay, I have to think about this. I need what about these best pages? What about these reviews? I have these getting set up for the week. Is it what can I expect? And just the anxiety of it all definitely robbed me of the very little sleep that I typically take. And it was definitely a thing, and I didn't like wanting to be my own version, my own superhero. Like, I really didn't talk to people about it, and I wish I had been a little bit less ego driven and been I wish we would have been having this conversation a couple years ago instead of having it on the podcast while we were all going early.
So interesting because I used to be a 6 night sleep an hour person until I had a kid. Then
Yeah,
it all
yeah.
changed, and I am much tireder and need more sleep now. Though lately I've been staying up a little bit later, but especially for years I was like, oh yeah, 25% of your day sleeping. That's the max I'm willing to devote to this, and who knows what kind of damage I did to myself long term doing that. What about today? I mean, I know that every time I talk to somebody who we know or used to work with or, in our circle, we're talking about all the site shutdowns, all of the layoffs across tech and media and games. What's going on with the publishing biz today, especially tech publishing? It seems unfathomable that it could get worse and that every time you turn around, it does.
Yeah, it's gotten grim. I mean, it's short of some of the the higher tier publications, your New York Times, your Wall Street Journal, it felt like most of the tech press really shifted hard into commerce, right? That's not a secret. And the problem is when advertising revenue shrunk, they shifted even harder into commerce, and it's just basically all affiliated links everywhere, and it's killed the quality of the work. And but conversely, like now that's not working because now Google's taking that up now and then basically sucking up all that commerce potential, and so it feels like it's an industry that's looking for a new way to make money, and there isn't an answer, and the result has been massive layoffs, restructuring, and like I feel like an overall kind of dip in quality in the kind of work. I mean, yeah, you brought up Kotaku, and then the reason why the EIC left is because they were forced to do 50 guides a week, which is not news, which is and also it's just like a crazy untenable number for a limited staff to produce. But again, also more importantly, like the choice of that type of content is intentional, right? It's like it's definitely like more to commerce. It doesn't necessarily fit with the site, but they're like sort of chasing after these potential dollars, and I think that's just indicative of the kind of broader, wider issues that we're having to the point where like it's kind of hard to even trust what you're seeing on various tech sites.
Oh, all already, yes. And that kind of thing, we're like, oh, write a million stories about this. That seems like a backdoor for AI to come in. That seems to be what I think a lot of people want, is to say to ChatGPT, hey, go write me some Zelda guides. Go write me some Dragon's Dogma 2 guides. What about AI? Now, who here had to
Oh
deal with an
boy.
AI scandal at their job? Come on, Roger. You were right
Yep.
there with
Oh
me.
yeah, I was right there seeing it when all that AI stuff happened, and it was to be in the middle of it. I mean, talk about losing sleep. I mean, that was a really stressful stretch. Was it early 2023? Just as ChatGPT had exploded, and then the site being caught producing AI generated financial advice content. Yeah, that was stressful, and like it's what I've learned from that is that it was a huge controversy at the time, and CNET kind of became the bellwether for this AI controversy. But then you saw Sports Illustrated, and you saw Gizmodo, your site, Dan. You saw various other sites. So really, the
In the
lesson,
door, first thing that hit me in
right?
the face was, hey, guess what? We just published an AI story and we didn't tell you about it first. And it sucks
Yes,
too.
that's the thing though. The lesson that they learned was like, oh, we just have to be quiet about it, or like there was no lesson learned about the blowback that CNET had received. It was just sort of like, oh, we should keep doing this, but just try to be more on the DL about it.
So, Dana, did you ever get any pressure to do AI content? Did they come to you with all kinds of plans and want you to sign off on them? Like, what was the conversation like?
Actually, no. I mean, to Yahoo's credit, there was never any discussion of generating content based using AI. I think the one area of discussion that we had, and even this discussion dried up, was the using of AI for brainstorming of follow-up story ideas. The traffic charting tool that we had a suggested AI headlines tool, but we were not forced to use it. You could look at it in the CMS. You could not look at it. No one would know if you were ignoring it. But no, to Yahoo's credit, no one pressured us to use AI. We didn't want to use AI. I think we were actually on that point on the same page.
What about Cherie? Did you guys play around with AI at all?
No. And if we were going you have people like incredibly smart people, geniuses like Asian Pilch that will go in and explore and give you all the ins and outs of why or why you shouldn't. And Abram is absolutely again. And we trust Abram. Abram is one of the best in the business. But if we were going to use AI in future, like the one place I wanted them to use it, I think if we're going to use AI period in the industry, the best pages. Them for that. They it takes away from actual journalism. It takes away from the things that feed into the best pages, the reviews. It takes away from features. It takes away from interviews, like those stories that actually drive traffic and that everybody is hungry for. Like, yeah, feed the bread and butter guys, but maybe like don't use our like actual human being bandwidth to feed the bread and butter god, especially since Bard, aka Gemini, is getting smarter and smarter, and what it's doing is scraping all of our best pages and making its own best pages and submerging our best pages with killed affiliate money, which is why we're going into this tailspin now. And let's not forget that every 3 to 6 months, Google likes to have an algorithm shift, and now all those things that were best practices now need to go in the garbage, and you need to start from scratch, and you need to re-up on every best page that you have, and make sure that it's in tip-top shape, or Google will not like it and will not surface it, and you will never see the light of day, and that delicious traffic and e-commerce revenue will just dry up like a raisin in the sun.
I think a lot about this concept of a prisoner's dilemma. Like, I think we would all, as organizations and newsrooms, have to get together and decide that we were sick of serving the SEO machine, because barring that, you can't not have an SEO strategy. You do have to participate to some extent. And it's hard, especially if depending on how your traffic and revenue are trending, it can be really hard to argue that you shouldn't be participating in that. The thing is, when you do participate, you are essentially serving 2 audiences. There is the audience who's going to find your stuff one time through search and maybe come back to you, maybe not. And then there's the people who liked you all along. And the stuff they're interested in reading is possibly very different from what the search audience is looking for. And if you are the editor-in-chief and you are charged with having a vision for what the site is and who you are speaking to, that job becomes muddied, and it becomes harder when you are essentially serving 2 audiences instead of 1.
I think that's the stress that the industry has been kind of dealing with, is this idea of running for Google and then running for your own audience. And I think increasingly they are too. I mean, I felt like there used to be, you could find like an elegant solution to kind of serve both, right? Like a smart headline that is both SEO friendly and compelling to human beings. But I feel like increasingly that is less the case. And like, just taking a step back from like, because I agree that, we all have to participate in SEO and understanding SEO strategy and how that works. But I do fear that increasingly, as SEO, as search generative technology gets better, Gemini and Bard gets better, even though it's not great now, it is going to scoop up most of that. That traffic, if Google wants to create a one experience, a no-click experience, just remaining on their portal, it almost like, does it make, and this is more of just a broader philosophical question, does it make SEO strategy completely useless? And like, do we have to, as journalists, as publications, focus back on the humans, on developing or cultivating a reader base like the old-fashioned way, as opposed to using SEO tricks, which is really what has driven a lot of our traffic and a lot of our visibility in the last few years, and is slowly drying up now.
I think that's why you end up with a different strata now of publications that have a good organic audience built in, where people just go directly
Right.
to the website or the publication rather than finding it through search. And the publications that have that, I mean, Gizmodo frankly had a lot of that. They had fans who would just come there several times a day just to see what was new. CNET used to have that, and I think lost a lot of it over time. But if you're able to do that and get to people through newsletters and get to people through a really good, homepage that really tells the story and leads you through, and the New York Times does that and the Washington Post does that. But so many other people who are just living off of just Google referrals for so long are finding that they're not really the necessary part of that equation. Google will find something else to do with those eyeballs.
I also think this is a question of resources. Like, I think The Verge does a really good job of serving both search audiences and its native audience. But you need people to do that. And people are the most expensive thing on a balance sheet. So to serve both audiences, I think it is really hard to get around the fact that you do need to make this investment. And the investment that you need to make is, generally speaking, people.
We talked about the whole pivot to video strategy and the money that flowed into sites like Mike or BuzzFeed. A lot of that was because there was a lot of capital. And this, not to get like financially geeky, but interest rates were low. The cost of borrowing and investing was a lot lower. Now we're in such a different environment with interest rates so high that like no one can borrow and invest. No one can make the investment or the bet for the next thing. That's not to take it even grimmer, but like that's why I'm pessimistic about how this industry actually finds the next thing, because there isn't a lot of investment dollars for that right now. It is, as Sherri was saying, doubling down on things that isn't working, because that's all there is right now, is what we're kind of stuck with, because there isn't that willingness to invest in the new thing or the new business model, because it's just the money isn't there.
But then you want to have, everyone wants to see the return on investment on the person. So you have to say, oh,
Yes.
we're hiring this person because we think this will bring in this number of clicks. And, and it's always tough to codify that number because, what are we doing? We're writing articles, we're writing headlines, we're making videos. It's tough to translate that into an expected performance number unless you're gaming the SEO system, which now doesn't even work anymore. And of course, AI, I think, is just beginning to mess with us, basically. We just caught the very beginning of it, and that's just going to keep evolving and just making our lives more and more difficult.
And that calculation of what a person's value or what a reporter's value is, I always felt was extremely flawed, right? Because inevitably you'd have the writers that are writing the best lists or commerce content with the highest numbers, whereas you've got folks writing or getting the interviews or breaking stories with comparatively lower numbers, because while this might be traffic, there isn't as much money in it. And so like that unfortunately is the calculus that kind of rules the day with a lot of these publications, but it's I feel like it's flawed, and like you're seeing the long-term impact of that play out as sites start to shift, as like the content on these sites shift towards more best lists and less news stories. Again, the Kotaku example being a good one.
Yeah, and that stuff becomes commodity content where it doesn't really matter where you get it from because it's all kind of the same. If I'm looking for recommendations for like t-shirts, and I can go, if I type it in, who knows what I'm going to get? People are starting to distrust Google to such a degree now because they know it's just full of farmed content, and you can tell who's actually touched the products and picked them up and really used them, and who's just picking things out of a catalog to put in. But you have to spend your time on the page, and go through it in order to figure that out, whether or not, I don't know, New York Magazine is really testing air purifiers. I don't know. But if you read the article, you could probably, if you're a savvy reader, figure it out. But I don't know if everybody can.
I appreciate you saying that, because I do still believe that certain guides out there really do meet the standards of journalism and our journalism. And so not all guides are the same, but I appreciate your shout out. There are still guides out there that are in depth, that are rooted in real product testing.
To that point, I think with the investment with people, it's who we're investing in, because I think here we would like to think that we are investing in journalists, we are investing in reporters, we are investing in breaking news and feature writers and what have you. The powers that be above us, they think we are investing in content creators. I do not hire content creators. I hire journalists. There is a market difference. And the more we give into content creation, which isn't a bad thing per se, but it's a different thing. And as we're going into whatever journalism 3.0, 4.0, wherever we are right now, we need to make definitive lines in the sand on where we're going to stand with this. Because yes, pay the bread and butter guys, of course. Like if you need the econ money, yes, do that. But like don't let it take over to the point where it's all econ. Because that's not what people read. People are not going to on a Saturday morning be like, yeah, let me check out this bench page for relaxing Saturday read. They want to read an interview like, oh, such and such got an interview with Frank Azor or Jensen over at NVIDIA. Like they want to hear those stories. They're not looking for best lists. And we need to right the ship. And I'm very sad to say that we are going to see a lot more layoff before the ship gets righted and whatever is going to rise from those ashes emerges.
Or maybe we'll see a shift from, traditional media to these kind of quasi influencers that kind of straddle the line there. And I think Marquez Brownlee is a good example of that. We all know him. He's a good guy and he does great stuff, but he's also an influencer who does, paid placement stuff. And now he's an investor in a company. But also, if you ask anybody younger than us, that's totally okay because that's just what they grew up with. Everyone being an influencer and being a social media personality rather than joining a traditional newsroom. And I wonder if that's what people younger than us are going to do in the future.
But I mean, we can do that now, but we need the bandwidth to do it. Like there are quite a few newsrooms that aren't taking advantage of video, or they're doing getting into it now and getting into social. And it's like, where have you been? Well, they've been doing best pages and everything but the things that they need to do to stay competitive because e-commerce revenue back then it was, and now it's not, and the bottom is falling out and nobody knows what to do but double down, and doubling down is not keeping people's jobs, it's not raising SEO, it's not getting eyeballs, it's not doing the things that it used to do, and we need to get off of that drug immediately, cold turkey.
So funny doing this for 20 plus years. Whenever there's a trend and people are making a little bit of money, everyone goes, oh, this is it. And they go all in and they never think for a minute. The addict never thinks the high is going to end, but we all know that it will. Just like, we filled the page up with display ads and display ads went away. And we did all the commerce content and the money there dried up because of competition and because Amazon started saying, oh, well, I'm only going to give you 5%, 4%, 3%, whatever. They can change the terms of the deal because it's all about them. And of course, didn't BuzzFeed, when they were basically half shuttering, decide that they were going to pivot to video again for at least the second or third time?
I can't tell you how many times I've heard video is a black hole for revenue, but yet and still, you still need it. You still need it in this 21st century newsroom. You absolutely need it because the line of tech tips and all of those folks are eating our lunch money, just reaching right in our pockets and taking our lunch money there because we are not doing the things that we need to do there. Like we sit there and we want to put our writers, our journalists, as experts, but we're not getting them the face time that they need to be said expert.
And that was one issue I had. I think I've seen at and even at cord cutters, but also I've seen it with this idea of the brand being sort of the most important thing, the priority. It always superseded individual names. I think there's kind of a fear among publications of building up individual brands because, well, one, you'd start paying people a lot more money when they start to blow up. But I think that's one of the issues why you've seen publications be so reticent about building up a video strategy that would match something like a Linus Tech. Because beyond the fact that those operations are they're fully dedicated to creating great YouTube videos, great videos in general, right? That's their main bread and butter, that's their main core strength. The issue of taking individuals whose main jobs are writing reviews and putting them on camera it's almost like it's always felt, and this is part of the problem, is it's always felt as an afterthought. It's like a secondary thing. And especially now when investment is where capital and money is just so limited and resources are so limited, especially after all the layoffs, folks they don't have time to do video, right? They've got to write those 15 reviews or those best guides or whatever, and they're not going to be on camera. Like it feels like that gap is getting even further apart because there isn't that willingness. And I think in the past,
yeah, we know, I mean, look, we all know like Joanna Stern, who makes fantastic videos at the Wall Street Journal. And Roger and I, we used to get, why don't you guys make videos like that? And we're like, because she has an entire team dedicated just to her videos.
Absolutely.
Like
she has her own operation.
Weeks. You're asking me to do 3 videos like a week. And yeah, what was the video split like for you, Dana?
Unfortunately, Engadget lost its video team during the recent layoffs, but we already had a pretty lean team. It was a team of 2 full-time video people and 1 contractor. And no, it is one of those things like we were talking about before, that it is difficult to put an ROI on a video team. But I agree with Sherri that it seems obvious to me you need a video team. What are you going to not have a video team in the year 2024? But it is one of those things that's hard to put. It's hard to assign ROI to it. And there's a few different roles in the newsroom that I feel are also so essential and so useful that are also hard to assign ROI to. Social media, anyone in a programming role.
I mean, copy
these
editors
things are really hard. Yeah.
Copy editors are like impossible to put an ROI on, right?
Yeah,
Did
totally.
you guys have copy editors at Engadget?
No one in the dedicated copy editor role. I mean, there were people who were wearing that hat in addition to other hats.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about CNET is they kept the copy editor role, and they still have a few, and that's very rare. I haven't seen that really anywhere else. You at Future, Sherri, you didn't have dedicated copy editors, right?
You roll your eyes.
I'm
seeing your face.
Like I'm rolling my eyes for the people who were lost. We started when we first were acquired. We had a copy desk, and we had a photo team, and we had a small but passionate video team. First went photo because we were told that nice photos don't matter. Come to find out they do. Then the copy desk went because you can copy edit it ourselves, which we can, but it always felt really nice, even though we went back and forth with the copy desk on certain terms, like having that safety net, like making sure that our stuff is going to sparkle no matter what. And then the video team went, but then it came back, but then it only a certain few could get access to it, and like you were like if you did it because laptop, I basically did things my way. Like I call me Frank Sinatra. I do it my way for better or worse. I'm hire people into my team that could do our video, and would do our video. So the CES before last, I got my whole team to go, and there was some sponsorship with it, but we put out at least 30 videos for CES. Like, were they all successful? No, but they looked great, and the ones that hit, and could be used for a sizzle reel, an example, and all of that. And it's a vital part. Like, who wants to go to CES? Like, we went to CES and read all this block of text, which, listen, I love my block of text. I love writing it. I love creating it. I love reading it. But some people need to see it. Like, especially if I'm talking about this abstract concept, like, video is the way to go. Like, and we're so mired down in paying the bread and butter job. We're losing the things that make our journalism so fun and interesting.
I know we've spent some time lamenting the heavy emphasis on commerce. Not that there's no value in commerce, but to the exclusion of a lot of other things. And I'm still sort of stuck on the implosion of ad sales. And I come back to this with video just because, and these were the sort of things that would keep me up at night, namely things that I didn't feel I could control myself. what do you do if your team has produced gorgeous video, but CPMs are down? What do you do if you've produced this wonderful video or even launched a series, but either your ad sales team can't sell it, or there's not even really much of an ad sales team focused on premium sponsorships? I sort of come back to the ad question. I sort of understand in concept why we are where we are, and I've accepted to an extent that the ad market isn't what it was before. I still don't know if I fully have accepted or wrapped my mind around why does it have to be so bad that you can't at this day and age just produce really high quality stuff that earns advertisers.
I mean, most of us are old enough to have started like in the magazine days, the tail end of the magazine days. And there you had real ad sales teams that were supporting these magazines. That's the only thing you had. You had subscriptions and you had, there's no programmatic ads for magazines. You got to sell the actual ad. And I think that online, digitally, a lot of ad sales teams kind of lost that talent. Those people went other places. They went to go sell for software as a service companies or, some other big tech companies. And you ended up with everybody leaning on programmatic ads, which is what we used to call remainder inventory. Just, you throw a bunch of money and your ad will show up at a bunch of different sites and you're paying pennies on the dollar for it. And you just have to push more and more page views to get a smaller and smaller pile of money because the few ad salespeople who are left can't sell their way out of a paper bag. At least that's my take on it, Roger.
I definitely, having had conversations with many ad folks in the past, like there's an element where, you're selling you've got one mode of operation. At least when I was at CNET, like it wasn't just programmatic ads. We're selling direct ads, and that was a big part of the business. But that was selling direct ads for one specific type of content. That was like the iPhone launch event, and it was around coverage or around a live block. I found, at least what was frustrating to me, was that when we tried to experiment with different things, whether it was podcasts or premium video or things like that, we couldn't get sponsors because it was like telling a salesperson to speak in a different language because they were geared to really only understand how to sell ads on a specific type of content. We asked them to do something else, something different. And so an answer to your question, Dan, about like whether or not it has to be this way, I don't know if it does. I think, if you had more talented or flexible salespeople, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. But I feel like there's the overall momentum that's kind of carried us into the position that we're in, and we're kind of stuck. How
often are we asked to be flexible and to change how we cover stuff and how we do stuff?
All the time.
We as writers and editors, we had to be flexible. Every 6 months, everything would change. And if you didn't adopt, that was it.
We also didn't have the cool, the very generous expense accounts that the salespeople always had.
God.
So always jealous about that. Always tag along if they had a drinks thing because their drinks would be top shelf. Like the days of like going to Barcelona and expensing a nice meal for the team after Mobile World Congress, and having drinks after that, like those are like dead at this point. Like it's this weird like mythical stretch for me where like budgets were a lot more gray and there was a lot less scrutiny because they were like actually things were pretty, like I remember having kind of nice dinners and nice drinks. I recall, especially with Mobile Congress, because I'm sure like you guys know, like you're spending all day, like you're spending like 15 hours working, and then you're having like a really nice dinner at like 10 p.m. And then all the people in the US like look at your Instagram posts and they're like, oh my God, these guys are doing nothing but eating nice dinners and having tapas and wine. But it's a weird, like it feels like a bygone era where like now like there's heavy scrutiny on all things expenses, and things are a lot limited. There are actual like DMs, things like that. It's different.
What was your biggest expense, entertaining expense report?
Oh God.
So back in the AOL days, some of us got away with expensing United Airlines upgrades that we purchased off Craigslist.
Whoa! Wow!
Nice.
Wow! That is amazing.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't fly today. But looking back, it's pretty amazing that that was ever allowed.
My biggest one was when our colleague Rich Brown was leaving New York. I ended up footing the bill for his going away party and it was like $1,000. It wasn't that crazy, for a whole bunch of us going out. But I had no problem expensing that. But I think a year or two later, that would not have flown.
Things really changed. In recent years, there would be about one incident a year where I would go to bat for someone on my team against the expense team. But it would be, in more recent years, it really was not outrageous stuff. It's just that the expense policies were generally not written for editorial teams. So, gosh, like, I had a whole thing. I downloaded on my personal iPhone apps that I was testing for a best of guide. Expensing those was a little hard because on its face, it violated the company's software purchasing policy. I didn't get a purchase order for it. I didn't get IT approval. 1 year, someone was denied hand lotion in Vegas, and they were like, "Hey, you sent me to cover CES, and my skin is cracking." So yeah, I would have at least one sort of argument with the expense team a year in recent years, and it was generally over really petty stuff.
That's the thing, and that's what makes you just anything under whatever $100 or so. I just eat it. I don't care. My whole time I never expensed little stuff because I just knew it was not worth the psychological stress. What was expensing like for you, Sherri? What kind of big parties did you throw? I feel like I didn't get invited to those. If you did.
Yeah, we didn't really throw big parties. Like it'd be basically when we're doing the best of CES, like we like afterwards we get together, have a big dinner, and expense that way, or like God forbid somebody like there'd be a hotel mess up, and now one of my writers was like, "Hey, they're asking me for $1,000 and I don't have it." It's like, oh well, corporate cards to the rescue. But typically nothing crazy because again, the headaches of it all. It just like. But I just want to piggyback real quick to that ad question we were talking, the ad sales question. Do ad team, like, where's the money? Like, the money's dried up all over the place. Like, one of the days where Alienware is and Dell are hosting Run the Jewels, or like even though I know Amazon had Wu-Tang at CES this year, and like there were a couple of parties that I missed that I really wanted to get into and see some folk, but like those days are few and far between, and those tend to be the days that we look at when it's like, oh well, why did they go bankrupt? Oh, because they hired Wu-Tang. It's like,
I feel like that's not the most expensive band you can get. They're probably a good mid-range, but we used to get mid-range bands, Roger. CBS used to pay for. We had like Run DMC, and we had Beck, and we had Snoop at these CNET parties. We would also bring 100 editorial people to CES, and then like 2 years later, it's like, okay, 7 people are going to CES. No, obviously there's no party. Wow, what a cliff to fall off of that was.
Like, we would be so jealous of you, like, oh my God, they've got trailer, they got this. And then I remember one year we did the trailer. It was like, it cost how much? And how many people? We didn't even go. I went in that trailer once.
I hated the trailer.
Like, this is absolute nonsense. So it's like, there was a Keeping Up with the Joneses that I'm glad it's gone, but it's gone the other way. Like, I feel like that we were in feast, and now we are in extreme famine right now.
Yeah, there's definitely an overcorrection, and I think I definitely felt it at CES. Basically every team there was very limited. There were not a lot of end of show wrap parties. I will say, Dana, by the way, I crashed one of your end of CES parties. I forget what year it was, but it was like an off the strip, and our CNET party was like right next to your Engadget party. I there was sort of a door, like a service door, and like it swung open, and I saw Chris Velasco and Sherlin, and I'm like, wait, what? And I walked in, and I spent the rest of the night like hanging out with Engadget folks. So I was partying on your dime for a little while, at least 1 year.
Nice.
Can't remember which one.
I mean, we should say too, these parties aren't for us, right? I mean, they're for advertisers, right? Of which there are fewer these days.
Yeah, and partners and yeah, all these yeah, they're to show off, and we're there to sort of be the hey, come ask this guy about what TV you should buy, and meet the guy who did that video, and yeah, no, they're definitely not for us.
Like I will say, Dan, CNET definitely made one of my concert dreams come true with the Janelle
Yeah,
Monáe
yeah.
concert, because if she had asked me to go on the road with her, I let my boyfriend at the time know. I let Laptop know, like, listen, if this happens, don't ask. You've been warned. I'm leaving. Like, this is dope. There will be no two niche. I will be on the bus to play wherever she goes. If she asks, I'm gone.
That running the merch table, you're hawking T-shirts, whatever it is, you got to do.
That was the final scene.
That was the last one, right?
That was the big.
Before that, I think it was Macklemore.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. They kind of came and went. There were some good years and some weird years.
Snoop was my favorite still. Snoop showed up like 3 hours early. The entire club was smelling of weed. That was kind of the best.
What do you think? Just to switch gears for a second, what happened with the Messenger? What went wrong there? Number one, it was the biggest media startup in the last couple of years. Lasted less than a year, and several people from Gizmodo went over there. Right when I was joining, about 3 or 4 people were quitting to go to the Messenger, and I felt a little jealous because they were very well funded and they were throwing money at these people. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be great." What happened?
I mean, for one, I felt like after reading the early interviews with the Finkelstein, Jim Finkelstein, where he sort of promised to hire more than 100 journalists right off the bat to build this site. I was already really skeptical, and then I think my worst fears were confirmed. Were like on day one, they basically switched from like, we're going to do enterprise journalism, we're going to do real reporting, we're going to dig into stories. Instead, it was just all just, gossip slop. It was repurposed stories from other sites. Reading about especially the aftermath, I feel really bad for folks who jumped on early, especially if this was your first or second job in journalism, where you spent like a year basically writing stories that you copied from other publications. You have nothing of value to show after that time. It sucks for them. I'm sure they're all great, but you've effectively wasted a year of your life with nothing you can show for it. That's the worst part for me, for a lot of folks, the kind of the longer term damage. But yeah, and that was again, if they had stuck to their goals and pursued more ambitious journalism and actually were able to kind of get out there, maybe they would have shot. I don't know, but throwing all that money out there and then expecting traffic to just come because I don't know,
just to have an SEO farm.
Yes,
was the strangest thing.
That's the thing. You built up the thing. You've hired a lot of talent, really some big name journalists. There were a bunch of folks I recognized who went over, only to kind of create this SEO click farm. Was just kind of baffling to me.
Back in the 90s, if you were starting a magazine, you knew you needed 3 to 5 years to even break even on the magazine. Right. So how they did not give themselves the runway for at least 12 months, not even 12 months, I just don't understand.
Well, what happened too with Protocol a few years back? They launched it. They hired these people, some high-profile people, and immediately did layoffs. And the site did persist after that. But I think just coming back to this point of growth in media takes patience.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how much patience corporate owners have at the moment.
I mean, that's why the problem with all these VC-backed businesses, right? There's such a short time frame of getting an ROI on this thing that when that window closes, you're kind of done. And I think the patience to actually create a long-term sustainable business is just not there anymore.
That's what my boss kept telling me at Gizmodo when I joined up. After the first couple of weeks, he was like, "All right, you're not the flavor of the month anymore. The CEO is going to come, aiming for you." And that was it. Everyone was very excited for a very brief window of time, and then that's it. And that's what happens with a lot of these startup publications. I say that as someone who just started a new website 2 weeks ago. So, fingers crossed.
But there's a difference between what their publications need to be doing and what the Messenger and other publications, which is throw money at the problem. Like you're doing a slow build and with measured release and things of that nature. That's what needs to happen. I think that venture capitalist money has no place in journalism. Like a journalism needs to be like a publishing house needs to be media first, like for better or worse, because we understand what the art of journalism is. There's the trials and tribulations that go into it. Like, yes, you need your money people to help keep the lights on, but there needs to be we need to go back to that balance. We've swung too far and letting the VC take over. Like, all right, well, this is what makes money. You don't write. You are not in these proverbial streets. You don't know what sells. Like, I have heard too many stories in these past 6 months of CEOs wondering why Bose is being covered and it's not a big brand. Bose is a big brand? What? Like why there's something laptop? That's why people buy them. Like, we are in a recession. People are buying the sub-$1,000 laptops and things of that nature. So you need those folks. Like, you may have never heard of Gigabyte, but right now Gigabyte is running a $899 gaming laptop with all the bells and whistles. You're damn right you better cover it and smile while you're doing it. Like, if you don't know and you've hired all these people that are supposedly the experts, trust them to do the work. That's what they're there for. Your opinion does not matter. Your opinion matters when, oh snap, are we going to go public? Are we going to, how much budget are we going to give for the travel budget? That's what I want to hear from you. Not when it's time for me to decide what needs to be written and what doesn't get covered. That's not your purview. Stay in your lane.
I think that the issue is that, like you said, VCs. I agree. Like, I don't think they should be in journalism. That, you know, with sort of like old school, like newspaper families, like old school papers. There was sort of there was a kind of implicit understanding that, like, you don't own this business because you're making a lot of money. You don't want to make a lot of money. There's a public good aspect to it, and with VCs and with a lot of investors and CEOs that come in nowadays, there isn't that mentality. It is about making as much money as possible, squeezing as much, blood out of this stone. And I think that there's something lost with that. The fact that there aren't a lot of like custodians of journalists out there, right? Like, you can sort of point to Bezos and the Washington Post and kind of either, but I mean, a little bit. I think he understands, but there's, I mean, even the Post have had, they've had their issues, and the Times has had their issues, the Journal, but I think there is still an understanding with some of them that, like, it's not just about making money. It's not just about profit. Whereas with some of these other sites that have gotten purchased or scooped up by VCs or invested by VCs, like that's what it's about, and that's what's killing journalism. Is that, like, all the stuff you're talking about, the kind of nitty gritty of like why you need to cover things, like, doesn't even register for a lot of the higher ups, right? Because it's all about spreadsheets, it's all about numbers and ROI, and a lot of that doesn't get accounted for when you're talking about, like, the editorial aspect, or they don't consider the editorial aspect of that.
Media organizations like Gannett, they decide that AP is just like a line item they can cut and
Right.
save a little bit of money. And that certainly seems like, shooting yourself in the foot when most of the hard news that you run probably comes from, your AP feed. And
Yeah,
what are you
it's
gonna replace
just
that with?
sort
More
of,
listening?
well, AI. You can replace with AI probably.
Yeah.
That's, that sort of opens the door to that stuff, right?
What about we've seen several people, some of whom we know, start their own kind of collectives where they're like,
Yeah.
oh, we're going to do, our own reporting on sports, on tech, on games. And it's just the four of us and a few other people. And somehow we're able to make it work. But is that number one, sustainable long term? I don't think we know yet. How many people can that employ? And then, I still can't quite figure out what the actual business model there is, other than, people who are curious at first subscribing, but will they keep that subscription up past the first year? Will those sponsorships come in past the first year? How long-term a deal is that?
I think it depends on the people. I think it depends on who they know. So if, like, let's say we were to start one of those collectives, kind of formula, everyone ends the business. So, like, and enough of those people like us, if you were like, all right, 6 months, a year down the line, we've done this for a year, we've gotten these many people, give us money. a fair amount of them would open their pocketbooks. Would it be big money? No. Would it be enough to keep a light on? And then at like year 2, year 3, I think it really depends on is and
Well, you heard it here first. I mean, that's it. We're going to get out. I mean, I like what Defector's done. They've outlasted Deadspin, which is something. I like the 404 tech site, which always makes me laugh because CNET had a podcast called the 404 for many, many, many years. And Aftermath, which is a bunch of people from different video game sites, and they're all doing great stuff. I just wonder how sustainable it is long term, and I hope they do well. But if it has to be dependent on you already being a star in the field and having a name that people will shell out, $5, $10 a month via Patreon to, where does that lead everyone else who is not an on-camera person or a very high-profile person? The four of us have the advantage of being very high-profile within tech journalism, within journalism in general, and that's an advantage I think a lot of people don't have.
Yeah, I do wonder what life is going to be like for that next generation of journalism students going into business. Like, what exactly? Because I recently had a chat with like a class of journalists, and the discussion was really more about sort of general questions about being a journalist. But I did kind of wonder, like, when they're actually up to, we're at a point where they have to apply for a job, like, what are their first jobs going to be like? Will they end up at a like messenger-like place where it's just a content farm? I mean, like, I was fortunate that I started in the business through an internship, and that kind of got me into the door. But like, I don't even know how many of those are available anymore, and what those opportunities will look like.
I mean, Roger, this is a question I just thought of for you, but my takeaway at first on some of these smaller collective owned publications is that there's value perhaps in serving a niche, just because, like we talked before, it allows you to focus on a single loyal audience instead of trying to please too many people at once. But in a sense, you just came from a more narrowly defined publication. So I don't know if you feel like I'm arguing against myself or already defeating my own point, but I guess you have the perspective of having worked for both a site that covered a whole lot of stuff and then a site that had a more narrow lane for itself.
Yeah, no, that's a good comparison. Core Coverage News was definitely much more niche focused to streaming, and really even as I sort of understood it, like, it was extremely narrow. Like, if I even wrote about streaming shows, there would be like rabid like negative reaction to that. Like, why are you just telling me about what's on? I don't want to know what your opinion is on a show. And so there was kind of a plus minus to that. Like, there was definitely a loyal audience that you can sort of count on, but it was a small site with relatively small traffic, especially much smaller than my previous employer. And so, it suffered from the same kind of impact that I think most sites did. I think I talked to a bunch of folks during CS about how in the fall, some Google algorithm changes, turned on and traffic just started tanking across the board. Core Coverage News also kind of had that same kind of hit, and so there's definitely value to that that sort of loyal base of readers. And I think Luke, who was the CEO and the owner of Core Coverage News, was really good at fostering that base, but it also wasn't enough, evidently, because once Google sort of had its hand, traffic tanked, and then the base is having a base is great, but it's like it's a foundation, but it's not going to get you like, it's not going to get any growth. It's not going to get you what you really need to like run a sustainable business. So I would say it's slightly different because it had more overhead as an existing property as opposed to like a Defector, right? That kind of started from the ground up. Probably is its cost, and its cost structure is built around the fact that it is kind of a collective and it isn't intending to create a huge amount of profit. So I think they're almost like two different situations in that, but yeah, like there's having that base of readers is great. It's just, I feel like it may not be enough long term if you're running this as a legit business.
Yeah, I wonder who's gonna pay for the lawyer for the kind of start the small startups with 4 people. Who's gonna who's going to be the HR department? How are you going to get health insurance for people? And it's all those business concerns that start to add up the cost very quickly. And if you're not, a hit right out of the gate, I worry about how many of these are going to get to year 2 and year 3.
And in all these layoffs, I worry about diversity. It's already, as far as people of African descent, it's already slim pickings for who you see on mainstream publications. I am actually the first lady African American editor-in-chief of a major tech publication, and I wonder when we're going to see number 2 or number 3 or what have you. I can proudly say that Laptop within Future was one of the most diverse teams there. I had African Americans, West Indians, Latinos, Palestinians, trans folks, like older folks, like you name it, we damn near had it in terms of diversity. It's because honestly, we live and work in New York City, and your newsroom absolutely should look like who you're serving. But I noticed that it's an ever lying problem to get those folks in the door. And now that we're facing this contraction, I wonder how many of us are going to be pushed out of the door, and when will they get back in the door?
Oh, especially when so many of the decisions are made literally by spreadsheet, coming up with a list of like how many stories everybody wrote and how many engagements those got and how many page views, and then coming up with a formula to kind of like give everyone a numerical ranking without actually seeing what they're doing, what they're contributing, what new perspectives they're bringing in. I know I heard a lot of lip service from companies I've worked at, multiple companies, about diversity. I don't know how much action I saw.
The job, as I see it, as an editor in chief, like, well, first, before I say the statement, how blue can I go, Dan?
It's up to you.
All right. The first part of that job is to be a shit umbrella. You are shielding the shit from the upper echelon of management from your team, like, and getting the work done as you need to get it done. Do they need to hear that, oh, well, your team is doing this and this and this, or they're not performing? No, you can say, hey, we're not hitting code, but I'm not going to sit there and crush morale like that. The second part of it is developing the next generation of tech journalism. That is the job. Like, I do not believe in unpaid internships. If you are still doing unpaid internships in 2024, you need to get out of the business. That is unethical. It's unfair. Like, without that that $500 stipend that I got from Community Connect, which was the parent company of Asian Avenue, Mihente, and Black Planet, I would not be sitting here, because I could not afford to pay for a train ticket to New York City for 5 days a week without that stipend. Like, and I damn sure couldn't live without it. So you should, like, if the idea that people are still doing unpaid internship, like, or even when you're talking to creatives, do not ask creatives to do things for exposure. You can't eat off of exposure. Like, if you can't pay, then leave them folks alone and figure out another way to do it. But don't cheat people out of the thing. Like, you need to eat, you need to pay your bills. You need to, like, don't do that to people. It's just unfathomable. But back to developing that next generation. That means that you are having those hard conversations. That means that you are being their cheerleader. That means that you are, like, really analyzing that person's strengths and weaknesses and trying to work with them to guide them into where you can potentially see them in the next 3 to 5 years. Like, that is the job of an EIC, in addition to playing, like, being able to juggle all those meetings that suck up so much time of your day, being able to play nice with ad sales and e-com and audience, and those moments that you get a little bit of FaceTime with the CEO or the VP or the CMO or all these 3-letter C-suite executives. Like, that is the job, and it's so it's so much. And then when you think about it, like, I'm still middle management. I'm doing all of this, and I am middle management. I am like the middle cog in this machine, and I'm just when I thought about my job in the future, my job was about my team. I was about my team. Yes, all of those things, but my people were the most important to me because those are the people that I'm spending 40 or 50 some odd hours a week with. These are the people that I know inside and out. They know me inside and out. And it's important to me that they like, hey, every day is not going to be a win, but as long as like, if you know that I got you and you got me, we're going to get through this shitstorm and we're going to eat well and we're going to have some type of fun after we get through all of this nonsense.
I would say it's been disheartening to see that in the midst of layoffs that there are a lot of people of color, different groups that have just been. It feels like that it disproportionately affected web cuts, and that as a priority, it felt like there was a lot of progress in terms of DI initiatives over the last few years, and that a lot of that just went out the window. I'm sorry if this has been kind of rehashed, but it's just been discouraging to kind of see that those priorities are just out the window now because it's all about making money and it's all survival, and maybe I'm being kind of naive about it, but I feel like part of the DI initiative wasn't just about being good or doing like social link. If there's a good business case for being diverse and offering a platform for diverse voices and diverse perspectives, because I think that just makes the content better. But it feels like a lot of that has been, and I think I assumed that people understood that, and it feels like with the way things have kind of retreated over the last few months, for the last year, that's clearly not the case. That a lot of those initiatives are just sort of like they've thrown aside in sort of blind quest to make some money or sort of survive, really, for a lot of those businesses.
And just like all the layoffs, both in media and in journalism and in the video game industry, it's like dominoes. You see somebody else doing it, you go, "Oh, I better do this too." And they've given me cover to do it because they already did it, so I can do it.
Right.
And the next guy can do it.
Right.
The next guy can do it, and nobody has to stand up and say, "Hey, this may not be such a great long-term idea." All right, so we've talked for a long time. I know people have stuff they got to go do. Does everyone want to give kind of a closing word or plug something or some final bit of wisdom for everybody?
I'm staying in media. I mean, we can commiserate all we want, but it does come from a place of love, and it does look like my next role, whatever it is going to be in media. So take that for what you will. Media, I just can't quit you. I am recently reemerged on X as Dana Wollman. I was off for a long time. And that's really the only public network where I'm really participating. Threads a little bit under the same name. Otherwise, I'm a big believer in private social media accounts.
Yeah, well, I will likely stay in media. I think I'm still in the middle of trying to figure things out, but almost 99% or 85% sure that I will stay in media. Like Dana, I can't quite quit it, and it feels like that's the only thing I know how to do adequately. Like seriously, like if I went to the grocery store, I'd somehow screw up shopping. They're really good at the journalism thing, so that's probably what I'm sticking with. And likewise, I spent like over the last couple months, I was focused on kind of helping with the cord cutters use social media accounts. So I've been really quiet on like Instagram and Twitter or X. But I'm back on it, even though I don't participate as much as I should. It's at Roger W. Cheng. On Instagram, I think it's Roger Cheng 24 or something. I don't know, I forgot. But yes, you can find me there every once in a while, posting a random thought. And yeah,
That you can tell Roger's not really like a Gen Z or like a younger millennial because he doesn't know his social media handles.
You know what? Instagram, because it's it's part of the interface. I just post on it. I don't look at my own thing. I don't gaze at my own account. So yeah. I'm an old man. Let's face it, I'm an old man.
Sherri?
Absolutely. It's media all day. It's tech journalism all day. I can't see myself doing anything else. I still love to play with all the toy And let's face it, I've just got too many people here that I love dearly that I would hate to not see on a regular basis, that I would hate to not see them at Build, Google I/O, IFA, ES, Computech, all these things that like bring us together. Like I'm still very much in love with tech journalism, so much so that I am basically right now being a reviewer Ronin. So if you need a review for laptop, smartphones, VR headset period, anything gaming, you know I do it all. I love to be a generalist. Hit me up. I am going to get back on my social media flag. All my stuff is still the same. Be it X, be it Thread, be it Blue Sky, be it Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it. It is Miss Smith 11, MI 3 S's MIPH 11. And I'll be back, and I hope to be back sooner than later with a full-time gig. But if not, stay tuned for Dreamsmith and a few other ventures that will live under that umbrella.
Awesome. And of course, I also don't know how to do anything else. And I've been doing this since, the 90s, which is crazy. I just started something called Micro Center News, which is kind of a mini CNET-like tech news and reviews and advice site for Micro Center, which is a big tech retailer. And they have been fantastic and given me a very free hand to kind of build my little, dream site of really good advice and really good reviews and really interesting news, a lot of AI stuff. And of course, hiring a lot of the people we all know as freelancers, which has been super fun and gratifying to be able to do. And I do a Substack every couple of weeks. It's just danackerman.substack.com. And it's just different things that I think are interesting about tech and about games and about the media industry. And at Dan Ackerman on Twitter X. And I think it's at Dan Ack on Threads and Instagram. So thanks for coming to the EIC Roundtable, the X and future, and once again, Editor-in-Chief Roundtable. And I hope we can all come back and do it again.
Damn right.